Understanding this can be a bit mind-boggling because, according to this study, what we call time or perceive as time doesn't actually exist at the quantum level. Instead, everything consists of a single moment, meaning it all happens simultaneously. In short, yes. Is time travel possible? Einstein proves to us with his general theory of relativity that this could indeed become a reality, showing us that if we somehow manage to develop the necessary technology, we could travel forward in time. What time does your watch show right now? And what day is it today? How many years does a human life span on average? Questions like these are ones that humanity has come up with to measure or at least partially understand the concept we call time. It is a system with a continuous beginning and end. Yet what we call a day is simply one full rotation of the Earth on its axis. And what we call a year is the Earth's complete orbit around the Sun. In other words, they are relative concepts without a beginning or an end. So why then do we perceive time as a straight line that constantly flows with a start and a finish? Why are we always in a race trying to use time in the best and most efficient way possible? So why do we even build our entire civilization in this race in a way that practically exhausts us to the extreme? Today, let's embark on a journey within time itself and explore how human perception has confined this deep and mysterious concept into a narrow mold, and how, with the Industrial Revolution, that narrow mold turned us into racehorses. Since the day humanity first set foot on this world, it has begun adapting to its cycles and developing survival skills. The need naturally arises to develop a system to understand and categorize the countless natural cycles that continue under endless subheadings, such as when morning will come and when evening will fall, when the weather will cool or warm, when the soil can best be planted and harvested, and when the precious yield will be gathered. As a final example of this, the first methods begin to emerge with the Sumerian civilization and subsequently the Egyptian civilization in the 5th millennium BCE. In the beginning, the rising of the sun, its position at the zenith, and its setting marked the day with distinct phases, dividing it into 3, serving as a sign that even shows us when prayers should be performed. When the sun disappears, the moon, the greatest indicator of time, takes the stage. Unlike the sun, its movements are easier to track, and its phased appearance due to its motion relative to our world played a critical role in helping our ancestors manage time more effectively. As a result, the concept of the lunar calendar emerged. First emerging in Sumerian civilization, the lunar calendar was used by Venetians due to its connection with tides, by farmers because of the belief that planting during a full moon yields greater abundance, and in religious rituals for the precision of the moon cycles. This established the time period called a month as consisting of 29 or 30 days. As time progresses in our civilization, complex systems and observational abilities develop, we see that in civilizations like Egypt, the solar calendar began to be used instead of the lunar calendar. The Egyptian civilization, whose life was entirely dependent on the Nile River, used its flood seasons as a fundamental timing method for agriculture. Alongside this, it calculated the duration of our planet's great cycle, one full orbit around the sun, based on the changing angles of the sun at sunrise and sunset. Within this great cycle, they realized that the moon repeats its phased movements a total of 12 times, and succeeded in dividing 1 year into 12 months. Later, the Babylonian civilization, which we could describe as passionate or even obsessed with astronomy, began carefully observing the movements of the sun, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn, which they deemed sacred in the sky. Drawing on the sanctity of the number 7 from ancient beliefs, they officially gave rise to the concept we call a day. Each day is associated with a sacred planet and celestial gods and begins to be used as such. But does humanity ever stop? They want to measure the process in even smaller parts and begin researching how long the day lasts and how long the night extends, employing new methods to measure it. In Egypt, as a result of this, A technique we could call sundials emerges, dividing the day into 12 equal parts. The choice of the number 12 is also interesting, because in fact it is based on the 12 great divine gods of Sumerian beliefs and the 12 zodiac events in the sky. Alongside this, its perfect alignment with the base 60 system created by Babylon mathematically also served as a separate factor. Naturally, the Babylonians didn't stop at refining the base 60 system. They divided an hour into 60 minutes and a minute into 60 seconds, making the system even more precise. As a result, the base 12 and base 60 systems we still use today have become an indispensable part of our lives. However, we must never forget this. Although these ancient civilizations could calculate time down to seconds, the fundamental concept of time they believed in was not linear, but a cyclical one. The earlier time-measuring systems, however, were tools created to understand these cycles. In the beliefs and perceptions of all these civilizations, the cyclical progression mechanism of nature remained the core philosophy of time. People built their lives upon the repetition of these cycles, including even their beliefs about death. Almost no ancient civilization viewed time as a flowing concept. Even after death, the belief that life cycles would somehow repeat began to take root in cultures and religions. Now, some of you might be thinking, so what if you see time as cyclical or not? But in reality, this is a concept with very serious effects on your psychology. Why? Because it has been used by someone to turn you into a sort of slave, a racehorse. Now it's time to dive into the more intriguing depths of the concept of time. As I mentioned earlier, you might not see any philosophical or psychological difference between time being cyclical or linear. That's completely normal, because for about 150 years, your mind has been washed and shaped in this way. But when you look at today's society, you should notice that its destructive effects have reached an unbearable level. You should even feel this when you look in the mirror, because they deliberately brought you to this state. In the 18th century, with people in Britain discovering the power of steam and beginning to use it to drive mechanical tools, the greatest transformation in human civilization also began, marking the start of the Industrial Revolution. Now, we can't just say here, the Industrial Revolution happened and humanity was ruined. If today we can live healthily past 80, if we have modern technologies and opportunities, if the system can sustain 8 billion people, it's all thanks to the Industrial Revolutions. But there's also a dark side to it, and its name is fundamentally wild capitalism and imperialism. With the emergence of the first factories, people who worked and built their life cycles according to nature's fundamental rhythms encountered a new concept: the notion of work hours. This work hour process covered a specific portion of the day, but problems began when Henry Ford standardized the assembly line method. From then on, time started turning into a value for employers. Previously, the production model was more like make me a table, but it gave way to how many tables can you produce for me in a day? Later, with the standardization of the assembly line, it turned into how many tables can you make for me in an hour, in a minute? Due to this production pressure, people were forced to produce more quickly in less time and began to be turned into the racehorses I mentioned earlier. It became a situation of, if you make me 5 tables in an hour, you keep your job, but if you can't, someone else takes your place. Later, this pressure would extend to minutes and even seconds. People who had lived for thousands of years in harmony with nature's calm and balanced cycles, shaping their perception of time accordingly, were completely detached from their nature. They were exploited in a capitalist system that operated 24/7, where even the concept of work hours didn't exist. Their time was taken from them, turned into products and ultimately profit, transforming them into mere machines. In fact, although the Industrial Revolution emerged as a way for machines to take on human workloads, unfortunately, due to greedy capitalist titans, it led to people being turned into machines, and humans became slaves to seconds. Precisely because of this modern robotic slavery mold, we began to see our entire lives as a production line. We are born, grow up over time, reach maturity, and then die at the end of the line, and the story ends. You're told that you're no different from a table coming off the factory line, and you're devalued. As if that weren't enough, an entire life is spent just to live for 2 days on the weekend and take 15 days of vacation a year. In return for that precious time of yours, you're given a mere pittance. And that's why, with your perception of time working like that production line, you can't escape anxiety crises thinking, "Oh no, I need to do this right away. I need to do that. Time's running out. I can't keep up with anything." Meanwhile, those titans are comfortably enjoying themselves with their billion-dollar fortunes. This is how a society is mechanized. Its freedom is taken away like this. Yet with flexible working hours, more generous vacation days, and most importantly, fair financial compensation for labor, yes, perhaps one person might not amass $100 billion, but society as a whole would develop and become more civilized. If you're in a place where the opposite is happening, know that the future of society isn't being considered there. It's being exploited by someone. Do you now understand why you weren't warned about the harms of the always working grandma concept, which was laid down by the Vatican in the Middle Ages and later imposed on you by industrial titans? And why scientific studies weren't conducted to inform people about its problems? Because today, neither science nor the media is free. There are studies on these topics, but proper permission isn't given for them to be shared with you. Today, science operates with the funding of those titans I mentioned earlier who exploit you. So instead of telling you, be in harmony with nature, rediscover the ancient balance, they say, "Tired, buddy? Come, let me give you some antidepressants I produced myself." Unfortunately, the mainstream science under their control remains silent, just as it did years ago with statements like, "Smoke cigarettes, it relieves pregnant women's stress." As I've always said, science is humanity's only hope for salvation. But only free science can provide us with this salvation. Otherwise, the largely controlled science and systems of today seem poised to bring about our collective downfall. In the end, in their eyes, we're no different from an object on the production line, are we? Yes, although the situation may seem dark thanks to the internet, finding the light isn't difficult. Both those who freely produce science and those who share this information are steadily increasing. And those who seek it can access this knowledge again. Especially in recent times, with both the increase in our knowledge of quantum physics and the development of technology and our understanding, the cyclical concept of time, our ancient ancestors' philosophy, has begun to challenge the linear concept and perception of time, and it's starting to boggle our minds. In 1908, the renowned physicist Hermann Minkowski, Einstein's teacher, combined space and time to introduce the concept we call space-time. These studies form the mathematical foundation of what is known as the block universe model. Minkowski defined space-time as a four-dimensional structure. 3 of its dimensions were space, and 1 was time. According to his idea, the past, present, and future existed simultaneously within this four-dimensional space. In fact, it wasn't Minkowski who first proposed this model. Nearly 2,400 years before him, Parmenides, who lived in the 5th century BCE, argued that the universe is an unchanging, holistic reality and claimed that the past, present, and future exist simultaneously. In fact, even he had learned this knowledge from someone else, the famous scholar Pythagoras. Don't forget that Pythagoras himself had acquired this ancient Hermetic knowledge in Egypt and India. In Hinduism, there is a concept called Maya, which can also be translated as illusion. According to this concept, there is always a veil between creation and reality that must be overcome. This veil is Maya, the veil of illusion. Indeed, according to Hindus, one feature of this veil of illusion that confuses our minds and prevents us from reaching the truth is time itself. In Hindu philosophy, getting lost in time means straying from the path to understanding the truth, and thus it has been regarded as an obstacle we must overcome. What leads a person into error here is the notion of thinking of the past, present, and future as separate moles. According to Hindu philosophy, it is believed that by overcoming this misconception and realizing that everything flows as the continuity of a single whole, a person can break free from the cycle of samsara. Focusing the mind solely on the present moment during meditation, without thinking about the past or the future, is precisely why this is so important. This philosophy, starting with Pythagoras and influencing other Western philosophers, has contributed to one of the foundations of today's block universe model. Time consists solely of cycles, and as a result, we are living in eras where we reinterpret the knowledge of the past. While Minkowski's block universe model views time as a large static block, one of the most intriguing scientists of modern times, Nikolai Kozyrev, interpreted this large block, despite agreeing with Minkowski that the past, present, and future coexist. Not as a fixed concept, but on the contrary, as one of the fundamental building blocks of the universe. He presented time to us as a plane capable of carrying energy forward and backward. One of the most significant figures influencing Kozyrev's ideas is Albert Einstein. In his general theory of relativity, proposed in 1915, Einstein claimed that time is actually a structure that can be altered by gravity, shaking the world of physics and overturning everything we thought we knew about the flow of time. According to this theory, which in fact is a proven theory, if you were on a planet near a black hole, 1 year passing for you relative to Earth's time might be equivalent to perhaps 10 years on our world. The reason for this is that a black hole, due to its unimaginable mass, warps and slows down the time around it. This phenomenon is beautifully depicted in the movie Interstellar. With the proof of Einstein's theory, humanity, whose classical perception of time had already been completely shattered, experiences utter shock when the discoveries of quantum physics in our time are added on top of it. In 1967, quantum physicists John Wheeler and Bryce DeWitt developed an equation. This quantum physics study reveals to us an intriguing possibility: the absence of time. Understanding this can be a bit mind-boggling because, according to this study, what we call time or perceive as time doesn't actually exist at the quantum level. Instead, everything consists of a single moment, meaning it all happens simultaneously. If I were to simplify it, everything you're doing right now is actually affecting the past and the future as well. And all of their consequences are manifesting in you at this moment. You're simply reliving slices of this process over and over. Frankly, putting this into words aside, even understanding it personally was difficult for me, and I don't think I've fully grasped it. Because our brains have evolved with a perception of time as something flowing, and comprehending this to explain it to you has challenged me a bit. I hope I've managed to explain this at least a little, because according to this approach, the law of entropy doesn't even apply at the quantum level. In other words, entropy, which best shows us the processes in the universe, indicating the disorder and breakdown in a system, doesn't exist in the quantum realm. In fact, it can even be reversed. This is actually an incredibly significant discovery because if, in the future, this field can somehow be harnessed with quantum computers and advancing technology, it might become possible to reverse the damage caused by time on an object, from reversing aging to healing dead organs, from restoring polluted water to its pure state to renewing worn-out metals. While discussing this topic with artificial intelligences, this thought also occurred to me: the idea of creating a timeless object. According to this approach, if we could create a timeless quantum field where entropy doesn't operate and place an object inside it, theoretically, that object couldn't be destroyed, and it could preserve its existence indefinitely without deterioration. Even imagining it feels strange. If it becomes reality one day, who knows what doors it might open? Humans can't help but wonder. It's precisely when quantum physics and theoretical physics come together that we've started to observe and understand the extraordinary nature of time in a fascinating way. Naturally, in this context, that famous question started coming to mind. If time isn't something that flows, if it's all one whole, then is it possible to move forward or backward within this block? In short, yes. Is time travel possible? In 1895, The famous writer H.G. Wells published his work, The Time Machine, introducing the concept of time travel to modern popular culture with a scientific foundation. In the novel, a scientist who invents a time machine travels to the future to examine humanity's social and physical evolution. Wells portrays time as a dimension so beautifully in his book that it could even be considered a foundation for the space-time concept defined by Herman Minkowski roughly 13 years after the novel. Science follows science fiction in a mysterious way. Don't forget this. It's a secret of humanity that has always seemed incredibly fascinating to me. Einstein proves to us with his general theory of relativity that this could indeed become a reality, showing us that if we somehow manage to develop the necessary technology, we could travel forward in time. Now I'll tell you how to do this. First, you board a spaceship capable of reaching 99.9% of the speed of light and hit the gas. Since you're so close to the speed of light, according to the equation E equals mc squared, your mass increases and you start warping space-time, just like black holes. As a result, the 1-hour journey you experience inside that ship equates to several years passing for us ordinary people on Earth. And I'm giving you an example. You set off in 2025, and after 1 hour passes for you, you return to the planet in 2030 according to Earth's time. There you have it, back to the future. But what if you say, bro, I went to the future, didn't like it, and want to go back to the past? Well, that's where things get a bit tricky. In 1949, the famous mathematician and philosopher Kurt Gödel began developing equations and proposing hypotheses about time travel. As a result of these equations, Gödel created what he called the rotating universe model. According to this, in our rotating block universe, structures we could call closed time-like curves, warps in space-time bending backward, imaginable as pathways, could potentially form. If one day we manage to detect and utilize these structures, traveling back in time could theoretically become possible. However, this model doesn't quite align with our current understanding of the universe and largely lacks validity. A similar but more detailed theory is the wormhole theory proposed by Einstein and Nathan Rosen in 1935, or officially known as the Einstein-Rosen bridge. According to this, if a theoretical machine could warp space-time using a type of energy we currently can't comprehend, it could not only travel faster from one part of the universe to another, but also, in a bolder approach, move forward or backward in time. Think of it as the opposite of the phenomenon I just described, approaching the speed of light to travel forward in time. However, we still can't comprehend how this could be done backward into the past. On top of all this, traveling back in time is a concept that even the human brain struggles to grasp. Perhaps that's why we struggle so much to theorize this, because it contradicts both logic and the principle of causality in physics. According to the principle of causality, one of nature's fundamental laws, every event must have a cause, and the cause always precedes the effect. In other words, you exist. This is an effect, and the cause stretches back through time, like your mother marrying your father and your grandmother marrying your grandfather. Now, if you went back with a time machine and killed your grandfather, it would disrupt the cause and effect relationship. As a result, the entire balance of existence, according to our current understanding, would collapse. In other words, even the slightest change made in the past would, at this moment, upset the balance of all humanity. And if space-time is unified everywhere, the balance of all existence. These are still paradoxes beyond our comprehension. That's why I hope we never discover this phenomenon one day, because the destruction would be unimaginable, especially if you imagine two rival nations discovering it. Just the thought of it is chaotically and paradoxically terrifying. For thousands of years, humanity has struggled to understand and control time. Calendars, clocks, technologies, all these are products of our efforts to measure and manage the concept we call time. But what has this linear perception of time imposed by modern society done to us? Trapped in an endless race, constantly striving to keep up with something, We live forgetting the value of the moment. But what if it's a trap? What if this system is designed to exploit us and keep our minds occupied? As we discuss quantum timelessness, the block universe theory, the theory of relativity, and so on, when we begin to integrate these valuable scientific studies, a truth emerges. Time is not linear at all. It exists as a cyclical block encompassing everything. And if the right conditions are provided, it could slow down or speed up, even be controlled. What concerns us humans within this is the following. It shows us what we need to comprehend in this order, where only the present moment encompasses everything. You're not in a race. Don't wear yourself out trying to reach the end, nor struggle in vain to escape it. Within a vast cycle, you're experiencing everything in its most precious form right now in this moment. And this moment even influences the past you thought was finished and the future you think hasn't yet arrived. In other words, you have the chance to correct a mistake you made 10 years ago right now. Of course, I'm not talking about physically going back. Maybe one day that'll be possible too. But I mean correcting it mentally. Accept your regrets, your pains, your mistakes, and forgive yourself. That way you can eliminate their echoes from the future. If we exist within a vast cycle, then appreciate the value of the conditions we're in right now. Make the most of it. This might mean spending time with your family, doing your work with enjoyment, or simply watching the scenery. No matter what, appreciate the moment's value. When you're experiencing something beautiful, don't think about the next step. Just focus on that moment. Are you eating? Don't think about what you'll do after you finish. Savor the taste of that meal. If you change your perspective like this, rest assured that everything you do will start to feel more meaningful and fulfilling. Yes, many of us live or work in tough conditions. Maybe we can't even find time to read a single book. But don't forget, this isn't the fault of nature or the system. This is the fault of the wretched system humanity has built, and you always have a chance to break free from it. One of the clearest and simplest ways to do so is through Zen techniques. There are tons of books and resources online about these techniques and Zen philosophy. By exploring them, you can improve your ability to stay in the present moment and make it a part of your life. Beyond all this, use the internet to read what ancient sages have said about these topics and learn what science says about it. By embracing an emotional philosophy of time, free yourself from this rat race imposed on you. And never forget this: life is one day, and that day is today. Take good care of yourself until we meet in the next video.